Welcome back from the break, folks. If you thought that the 10th place team taking on the 3rd place team was a good matchup, well, guess what? I've got news for you. It's the 2nd place team taking on the 9th place team. So we're moving it up a notch. TTK taking on Elyssar and Cookies. TTK, man, Mr. B and the boys, they've looked good.
Yeah, before the stage, I would have said this was the 9th place team. Elyssar would be it's opposite day, this stage. Or opposite stage, I guess. I don't know. Elyssar looks
Opposite stage this day?
And then, yeah, sure, whatever, Brim. Whatever pun you... TookTheKids looks incredible. I can't believe I'm saying that. They have had such a tumultuous offseason. To get to this point, it's insanity. They've beaten some of the best. They've beaten the one-shots, the aerials you just watched beat rent-free. It's just like, they beat LG. This TookTheKids team is for real. Gavini, Woo's the highlight player, though. He went like 1-8 last game. That's worth speaking about because he's not usually doing that. You see, if you take away the 1-8, he'd actually be positive. He'd have a nasty entry differential. So we're just going to disregard that previous performance, okay? It never happened.
Well, you know what? It's one thing to have a tumultuous off season, Tanner. It's another thing to have a tumultuous in season, which is kind of how it's going for Elyssar right now.
I'm just going to piggyback off of Cookies. I mean, if you just want to forget about a play day, that's exactly what Elyssar want to do from yesterday. It was a very, very awkward performance. Only Wimpy came to play. Everyone else, I think I had below a 0.3 rating. They were just struggling to get on the board. They weren't really making any progress with their map control. It didn't look all that solid. So today, it's kind of one of those games where it's like, Wimpy's been standing up. He's been doing better on the entry department, but I kind of want to see, the rest of the roster kind of pick themselves back up. We've seen them do it. They have done it this stage. They've looked absolutely stellar in week 2, and then week 3 and 4, it's just like they've gone back to their week 1 self. And if they can, pull on some of that week 2 strength, that work ethic that they demonstrated, we might be seeing, again, one of the most competitive teams that we have if they did the work.
Well, I'd have to imagine that over on TTK, the motivation to win is higher than ever because that playoff picture is looking pretty crystal clear for them right now.
Yeah, and unlike Rent Free, they played in stage 1. So they actually have a chance making the playoffs here in stage 3 if they can keep it going. Now, what I mean by that is they have, on paper, they've been punching above their weight, right? They're beating teams like LG. They're beating teams like Aerial. Guys like Gavini are popping out of nowhere and just taking the whole match by storm. And the way I see it is, guys, why not again today? Elyssar, almost said a bad word, but Elyssar is not looking good right now. Elyssar, they are down, they are battered, and they are broken men, and they can be dealt with today. Mr. B is licking his chops, I'm sure. Elyssar better be ready, because Gavini's coming.
Are you just going to take that, Tanner, as today's representative of Elyssar? Come on. Those are fighting words.
They are fighting words. I mean,
yeah, stand up for him. Stand up for him.
If you think for a second that Elyssar can't swing with the best of them, you got another thing coming. I mean, yes, they have their bad performances, but when they are hot, they are hot. I almost said a bad word. Wimpy's been popping off in a big way. Young Alec was a stage MVP in stage 2 for a reason. These are big names that can put up big numbers. In real, when he's feeling hot and he's got his lurker game going, he could do absolute great work. But the biggest thing, and I think this is the problem that this trio has had, the Vivid, Giddy, and Inrio trio have had forever, is just their pacing on attack is just it's non-existent. Like, they're just so slow. So what they need to do, like, if they want to win today, they need to pick up the pace on the attack. Entries have to enter the building. They need to take map control and not be afraid of to lose bodies to take that map control. What we end up seeing is they stall, they hold angles, they wait to be swung, and when they do that, they're just chipping away at their attack clock. And every team has got that pegged down at this point. I'm sure Mr. B, who's been paying attention, is going to be paying attention to that, and they're going to be just letting Elyssar shoot themselves in the foot with their time management. And then the second thing, win your entry engagements. Like I said yesterday, Wimpy was the only player that really kind of showed up. He needs some support. If the rest of the players can have a game, which we know that they can have, this is going to be a competitive game and not just a lopsided affair, despite the 7-0 or the 0-7 loss they had yesterday.
Well, Tanner, I've got one more question for you. Is there any hope in heck? I'll use heck. The other one's a bad word. That we do not see Villa. Come on. Just
I mean,
please.
both of these teams have got a dynamic map. I'm kind of looking towards a Chalet for today. I would also think an Oregon might be possible, or a Bank, because both of these teams have demonstrated that they like to go to Bank. As we go through the map bans here, you're seeing a couple perma bans coming up from TookTheKids with Border and Skyscraper. They don't typically go. There's the Villa. Thank you, as we don't want to see a fourth or a third Villa. I think we've had 5 over the last 2 Playdays. Theme Park, Bank, and Chalet being the last 2 maps. And both of these teams are strong on both these maps. We saw TookTheKids recently. I believe they beat who was it? One shot on Chalet, and that's always historically been known as Chalet's best map, or sorry, One Shot's best map was Chalet, and they came out absolutely dominant, especially in the first 2 rounds. They had back-to-back flawless rounds on this map. Elyssar, there are no slouches on this map, though we haven't seen it so far this stage.
So with the predictions, Cookies, who do you feel that this map favors more over the other?
Once again, I don't remember picking Elyssar. There's no way I picked the team.
Cookies does his predictions in a fever dream.
I changed it again. There's no way that I meant that. I was loopy if I picked Elyssar. Okay, I'm thinking Mr. B and the boys. They've already shown they're nasty at Chalet. Elyssar, I already hinted at it earlier this stage, how they kind of have struggled with who they don't have as a coach anymore. No Pedro means no epic VOD review. They probably learned nothing. They're probably going to go in here, attack all slow again, like you said, Forceful. Just going to be the same thing. You hear how many segments in a row we've said Elyssar needs to speed it up?
A lot.
At least 20 to 30 times we've said that. It's getting to the point I'm sick of hearing it. And you know what? I don't think today's going to be different.
I'm starting to think that they're not watching these segments.
I don't think they're listening to our analysis.
I mean,
it's ridiculous, but
to be fair to the players and the coaches, a lot of what we say is from a third person point of view. They will see things with more context and clarity than we can ever see it. So a lot of the time, if you listen to the noise, that's what I call desk analyst sometimes for players. It's the noise of like, oh, this guy's terrible, this guy's terrible. You'll start to get in your own head, and I think it's wise sometimes to not listen to that noise if you're a player. But that being said,
why would you listen to Stephen A. Cookies when you can just focus on the game at hand? It doesn't make any sense.
I love that. That's a very PG take to basically say they're a bunch of idiots. Don't listen to anything they have to say. They're talking out their buttholes, is I believe the PG once again version to say. But the players are ready. They're not listening to us. They're focusing on the game, and they are going to Chalet.
Thank you very much, Brimstone. And you know what I will say, John? I admire their attempts to keep this as a family-friendly broadcast and not trying to drive anybody away or polarize anybody. But one thing I will say is, I mean, as the desk talked about, Elyssar's tempo issues, and even to a certain extent, reality TV's tempo issues, always loving those long games, have been prevalent throughout this stage. But going to Chalet, it is a map that, especially on the attack, you can kind of bypass some problems of maybe getting bogged down in the details on, say, maybe other maps.
Yeah, with extensions being very favorable for the defensive side, sometimes you can still stall a little bit, but in comparison to other maps, like, for example, like Bank or even Oregon, depending on how you play on that map as well, it's definitely a very drastic contrast altogether. So I like this selection for both teams, although the entry game has looked a little more consistent for TTK in comparison to Elyssar. We have seen Wimpy really step up on specific games, but for the most part, he has not remained consistent in that department. And we just talked about the last game that Elyssar played. Although Wimpy did relatively well on the entry game and altogether as a player, we still didn't have the rest of Elyssar help him out at all. So all that space being made by Elyssar, it was for nothing, essentially, because they couldn't do anything with it. So TTK, they still look to be the favorable team here, but at least this map has potential for both of them in this best of one.
And it's also the kind of loss yesterday that I imagine might just be a shock to the senses for Elyssar, and even subconsciously just maybe get things back on track. The ban phase has played out quite a little bit in the duration that we have been discussing the overall trends going into this matchup. Zero and Finka being the attacking bans, especially Gavini's main operator, that Finka, off the board. Then Valkyrie and Mira following up. So not too crazy defensive bans, but seeing that Zero ban, definitely not one we see that often, and definitely not something we see that often on Chalet, but a couple times throughout Stage 2, we have seen that Zero brought on Chalet and a couple other maps as well. So still a powerful operator with all the intel at his disposal that you'll no longer have to worry about.
It's normally deemed more as a target ban, but for this map in particular, he can be really strong. Still having flank watch is always nice no matter what, but a couple extra Argus cameras for some potential burn, secondary hard breach so you don't need a main breacher on the round itself. It could definitely go a long way put in the right hand, so it's not a bad ban, especially on a map like Chalet, but not a bad sight either, bar and gaming being the first one up on the board for TookTheKids, and they have a fairly default lineup. They've got all the utility you would want, and I thought they would have 2 shields, but no, it's only 1, that being in the pocket of Mr. B, so that'll probably be put up near top blue, and it might be still possible to hold over near mezzanine, but it won't be as strong because, again, there's just only 1 shield available, and for the composition on the side of Elyssar's, theirs looks pretty stock standard as well. They might not need young Alec on the Twitch, he could maybe go on something else, but still not the worst operator at all, especially if those Twitch runs are put in the right place.
And Twitch's kit is very useful, and again, going back to the defense, even though they only have that 1 shield, they have both the Jaeger and the Wamai, whereas the Wamai can sometimes get banned on this map, especially if a Flores is banned earlier on, so having that combination, even though there is only 1 shield, you might still be able to hold on to Fireplace for a little bit, but again, without that shield, this might be a little bit more difficult of a Bar Games defense than we might otherwise see. Gavini might have to get a little aggressive in his position, or more aggressive than you might otherwise feel the need to, because of that lack of a shield. Where Elyssar decide to take from, though, that is the question. Seems like they're mainly starting on the library side right now. Young Alec moving over to Solar a little bit, but by and large, everyone from Elyssar is over by library.
If he wants to, he could hop up, maybe work his way in through Solar Stairs to try and initiate some of that piano control, but as of now, that will not be the case. They will be trying to get at least some of this back wall opened up from the Snowmobile side, but not having the Maverick to do that, it's not going to be the element of surprise, and just opening up a line of sight, perhaps. That could be the bigger aspect in this round. So far, Elyssar taking their time, as they normally tend to do on their attacks, breaking through vital piece of utility, such as those Banshees we just saw Rotero Drone destroy, and now young Alec begins to draw out near Solar, so maybe he'll get a little more active and finally begin to hop his way into the building to help deal with that top floor extension.
Overall, just taking some solid measures and solid courses of action in the first minute. And ooh, young Alec, it seems like I thought maybe he just spotted Trist, but it didn't seem like the drone stopped very much. So hopefully we'll just have to assume young Alec spotted the Jaeger sitting inside of office right now and give him the benefit of the doubt. But if that is misplaced, maybe Trist will be able to get a pretty big play later on. Ooh, that nade just barely missing Gavini. He'll peek out in response and tag up Inrio a great bit and destroy some hard breaching as well. A very powerful impact trick right there, stopping Vivid from getting open. Again, a key position that Elyssar need to clear out if they want to make this library push successful.
And Elyssar just taking a lot of time to set up once again. Only now do we see somebody on that main balcony rappel, I believe it to be, still allowing Gavini to sit up near top mez for much longer and just waste those valuable seconds and resources as well, as Elyssar are still taking their time to gather info when they only have a minute left to kill.
They're in all the positions they need. They have someone off his balcony. They have a couple players over on library balcony. Nothing has given yet, but they have the positions they need. Utility starting to come through. The final bit of utility. Wimpy hopping in as well, but it's the first kill. The first 2 kills going Gavini's way. Potentially 3 as well if Vivid is finished off, but even if Gavini doesn't get it, there you go. 3 for TookTheKids. Giddy trapped outside of library window right now. Young Alex somewhere, I believe over by Solar maybe still, but whatever he was doing, yep, still inside of office. He'll finally make his way forward, but the damage has been done. Triss swings and, well, unfortunately doesn't react in time. Young Alec gets the better of him in this case, but with only 20 seconds left, and the top blue shield still remaining steadfast on this defense. Seems unlikely Elyssar can come away with this first round. Giddy has 1 nade to destroy it. That is to be certain, but it's immediately caught by an ADS. Zapped out of the air. He downs Mr. B, but downs himself by vaulting into a frost mat, and TookTheKids with 1 C4 and a frost mat tie the bow on round number 1.
And the coordination, it was there, but the timing of all of it just simply wasn't. We had Wimpy getting active when needed to deal with that player top mez, but nobody else hopped in to help him out. There was no one going in through library, for example, as they were probably having to still worry about people maybe sitting near that hatch to watch that double window hop in, and they still had to worry about someone top blue, so it wasn't even like they could get somebody to aggressively swing either from piano double door or hopping in from the window directly. We saw somebody eventually get frost matted from it. Just seemed like everything just wasn't going according to plan, because once again, Elyssar, their common mistake we see them do all the time of just taking too long to set up, has nipped them in the rear once again, and allowed TTK to find countless frags from the very get-go. Gavini only having to worry about 1 person at a time, allowed him to net 2 separate kills and strengthen that top floor position tenfold, because you just have way less players to worry about, and you still have top blue and mess control.
Well, a couple interesting picks coming out from the attacker repick. I made the mistake yesterday, I will say, before I get into it.
Still got like
talking
10
about some
seconds, hold on.
talking about some interesting attacker picks before they've actually been confirmed. But they've been on there for a few seconds now, and I just stalled for about 10 seconds, and all 3 of them will be sucked by Elyssar. We have a Ying, a Dokkaebi, and an Amaru for the attack right now. Ying, certainly an operator that can speed up quite a bit of attacks, but that Amaru as well, you can just Gara hook into a window, take some very quick control, and if you want to transfer that into even more, use those Dokkaebi calls to push in and clear out the roam, with which, of course, there are quite a few players on the top floor, and you can find some of those Dokkaebi calls.
Well, Giddy does have the case, so maybe he'll try to Gara hook up the dining hatch to go for a plant, but that would have to heavily rely on how well their util exposure can be. Have someone playing above to make sure they have that cutoff angle and make sure the vertical cannot go down. Giddy is already in that prime position, so the execute, it's bound to happen. Giddy hops in the sight, but there is just no setup. I don't know why they went for that. It's a complete bloodbath with with TTK just mopping the floor with Elyssar.
Well, Wimpy's on a master bedroom window, so that's at least that's a good angle, and Vivid also on the trophy window. Another good angle, John. But beyond those two things, not much they can really do at this point. It seemed that there was a bit of a miscommunication. They had some, well, worthwhile positions that they needed to take and hold to make that rush work. But we see Giddy fly up the hatch with that Gara hook, but the flood from Inrio and Young Alec came, I think, just a couple seconds too late. They were meant to hop into West Main and pressure Packer's position behind that shield, but Giddy sends it up the hatch, and those players flood a few seconds later and are not able to take down Packer in time. But then, of course, there are also plenty of angles seemingly inside of Dining that cut them down as well. So whether it was timing or not clearing out the positions, might be a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but definitely both factors seem to be the bane of Elyssar's rush on that attempt. Now they'll just try to lurk around and hope TookTheKids make a mistake, or they can catch somebody off guard, but you can see one of the remaining members of Elyssar trying to make a lurk on West Main stairs work, but Woos is more than ready for it.
Yeah, just waiting for the first move to be made. There's a hard ping, though. Great down, at least by Vivid. So good coordination in that department, but it does seem a little too late at this point. Still a 4v2 Carter, unless Wimpy can maybe land that shot against the player above, but just cannot connect against the metal rebar.
Oh, the suppressed T95, I gotta say, sounds very lethal and very terrifying with that suppressor. But beyond the fear, again, I'm not sure how much Wimpy's going to get. It's nice that him and Vivid are now consolidating inside a fireplace, though. No hard breaching to open up this dining wall, and really nothing to destroy any Cade claws on either, but still joining with the team and just trying to double the power you have remaining is good for them at this point. Deployable shield in Wimpy's way, but he'll walk right past it. Bulletproof beaming intel to the rest of the defense, but he's worked his way up the fireplace hallway, but quickly dispatched by Mr. B with a couple well-placed shots from the Cade AUG. Vivid finds one. Packer now down behind that shield, but he's the only one left. Wimpy, unfortunately, taken down in the process, and Trish will just retake the position behind that deployable shield. Put one bullet into his chest and maybe one more in his head to seal the end of round number 2 for TookTheKids, as Vivid struggles to find even one remaining impactless frag before we hit 000. And Vivid survives, but the team does not.
And I hate to sound harsh, but I really don't know what Giddy was doing hopping up the hatch that early. I mean, we both said that. I wasn't even ready to hand it off to you because I was like, well, in the first 30 seconds, you would think they'd take a little while longer to set up. But even if Giddy didn't get immediately shut down by Packer, as he was still going for that defuse, he can still just throw a toxic smoke at you, and then he calls for somebody else to help him out, and then Giddy has to either fall down the hatch or just, you know, die swinging at that point. And then Case is stuck in sight, and best case scenario, Giddy found like maybe 2 like heroical shots, and it's like a 4v3, but still. Just the setup for that was just non-existent. They just jumped the gun in that position. I feel like if they had gotten a little more map control and were fully set up, having a bit more information, knowing what they were getting themselves into and not just running in blind, that could have been a much better execute. But because really nothing was gained except for Giddy being able to go up the hatch, it just seemed like a pocket strat that was not meant to be all that successful.
I think maybe especially if that timing between Giddy going up the hatch and Inro and Young Alec jumping in through West Main and putting pressure on Packer's position, that might have just been what they needed to work it out, because we had Vivid sitting on trophy window, we had Wimpy up above able to throw Candelas down and try and see if there's anybody rotating down from that master bedroom window. Both players had necessary bits of control. I think it really just comes down to that coordination between the players flooding West Main and Giddy going up the hatch. It still would have been risky. It still would have been close. But I think maybe just even with a little bit more timing, that play would have been much more successful than it ended up being. But 2 defenses in a row for TookTheKids, and that is a worrying sign, especially after Elyssar do attempt to try to make things very quick and fix the problem they've had so far, because one of the big reasons we thought Elyssar might have a chance in recovering from the 7-0 yesterday was that Chalet is a little bit more easy of a map to attack. You set up in your positions, and you don't get, like I said earlier, bogged down in details like you might on, say, Oregon. But right now, Elyssar have struggled to make up some of this ground. But with a Thatcher and a Thermite, maybe they can open up basement wall very quick.
Yeah, no chance you can try to K-Trick. Even without an EMP, if you improperly throw that K-Claw against a Thermite charge, it's most likely not going to connect at the right time. But confirming get that back will open up can allow Elyssar to solely focus in on this wine take. They just have that long line of sight for later in the round. They don't want to go for an execute, obviously, as they wouldn't really have all that much to try to commandeer themselves in the building. And speaking of that entry game, Andrew actually finds it, working his way down and through the big basement, get through to Triss as he tries to run back down and through sight, and the Warden player is gone. Although there aren't any smoke grenades on the board, still having an MPX, that long line of sight, can go a big way, especially when you want to get into that post-plant position.
And if you still want to use some flashbangs to make the execute a little bit easier, blind some key positions, you no longer have to worry about Triss just seeing through it. And there's no Wamai on the board as well, so bring those ADSs and not having to worry about any magnets makes it a little bit easier. The hard breaching working out swimmingly as well, with those EMPs being put to good use and the X-Kairos put to good use as a result to open up that wine wall. Maybe just sitting outside the garage wall right now, holding a key angle, doesn't have the diffuser. That's Vivid, along with the rest of his team, over by Trench and Wine Doorway. Made some very solid progress in the first half of the round. We just get one more kill to start moving forward, but 2 players need to worry about. These players up top, even if they get a kill on the site, if Gavini and Packer have the angles they need, this execute can still fall apart.
Yeah, having that hatch to play off of and having someone watch your west main, that could be completely unfaltered. But Elyssar, they just have complete site control. Now it's only Packer left up above as he has to retake in a 1v4 post plan.
And one that doesn't seem like he's likely to win. Thankfully, there's nobody big garage, but right as he peeks, Giddy cuts him down. And, well, I prefaced this round by saying I was worried for Elyssar, given how the previous 2 rounds went, but now this round goes about as well as you could hope for. They don't even deal with the players up above, which not dealing with that roam is sometimes the Achilles heel of some attacks on basement, especially ones coming from Wine side. They get the early kill onto Trist, and as opposed to round number 2, where the flood into sight seemed to have a miscommunication or an incongruent timing, here, everything moves exactly on point. They start flooding in through the trench wall at exactly the same time. They have somebody watching the hatch. They have somebody dealing with the player coming in from Blue Hallway. That time, as opposed to round number 2, everyone from Elyssar had the angles covered that they needed, and probably thanks to the kill they got earlier, had the manpower to do it with as well. So that was the round we needed to see after the first 2 losses for round 2. Not just a victory, but one that seemed that Elyssar were firmly in control of and were able to not bungle into a loss and make it a 3-0 for TookTheKids. And especially if they can get a win on bar as well, even at 2-2, but also remedy the mistakes they made on the site they lost and failed to attack in round number 1. Elyssar are still in this, and we don't need to start ringing alarm bells as to TookTheKids wiping the floor with them.
Also, in particular, in that last round, where exactly Elyssar went to go plant, not being in default to completely negate that hatch play, and also being able to work off that long line of sight they establish from Big Garage all the way down to Connector, and then maybe some parts of Blue if that player overextends. It allowed perfect coverage when you're already at a man advantage. Just everything went according to plan on Elyssar. And when they're able to stack up properly in that early round and get everything finished through in a timely manner, their executes are pretty solid as you would normally expect, but they're just not always able to get put in those prime positions. Starting out already around number 4, Elyssar will open up a new entryway into the building. They might save that one for later, but I could still imagine Elyssar altogether want to try to get this top floor cleared out as much as they can, but Vivid not having a lot of X-Kairos charges left, it might make this position in Mez pretty difficult to actually clear out properly.
Yeah, if they put some on that single reinforcement and Gavini is able to impact target even once, likely, I mean, maybe use 4 in this spot. It depends on how much X-Kairos he allocates. I will say if he uses 2, it's a little bit easier. 4, we start getting a little bit worried. See what Vivid decides to do, but still, 1 impact trick could be the end of this, but no, Inrio just sends it on in, just decides to, well, facilitate a clear with his own body and his own weapon, and it works out swimmingly. Wu still answers back, coming up from main stairs from below, but Elyssar clear out a position that caused them some major issues in round number 1.
Sometimes you don't even need to utilize those Excario shards. Sometimes a well-placed nade or someone just hopping on in when you have that shadow of the flashes can really pay dividends, and we saw that perfectly done by Elyssar. They've got that full top floor cleared out, and once the sledge steps in too, they can go for vertical, weakening that site pressure, and only being in an equalized position is pretty good altogether for Elyssar, especially since they still have multiple avenues to attack in these next 70 seconds.
Multiple avenues, and with that vertical control, with Giddy starting to open up these floors, he still has 2 nades as well, because they decided to have Inrio and a couple other players just send it in through library to take that position via gunplay. They now have 2 nades to try to clear out this player playing inside a stock. Let's see Giddy pull out the nade right now, still aiming, trying to see if Packer gives himself up, sees that the Mute's playing a little bit aggressive. He'll send the first on in, but Packer's playing by the doorway, not trying to put himself in the position to die to that early nade. He will rotate right in front of Giddy's crosshairs. That's when the second nade comes out. Bounces a little bit, but oh, Packer evades it again. Neither remaining nades effective in clearing out the Mute, but again, the gunplay from Elyssar, that is what has got them these 4 kills now, in what seems to put them on the pathway to victory in round number 4. Who's still alive? The only one with kills so far, but Inrio, definitely him and Young Alec, the star players in round 4 for Elyssar. Both of them getting the kills that this team needed to get things back on track.
Yeah, Young Alec always being a strong player in that late round position, but altogether, everything just seemed to go according to plan for Elyssar. They didn't struggle as much as they did with that coordination and timing. They had a plan to deal with that Mez player before things got too drastic, and in pretty much the first minute 30 or so, they had full control of library to go for that vertical and slowly begin to readjust and put the hurt down from multiple directions, not just vertically, but horizontally as well. Having all those prime spots to go play for vertical, weakening a lot of those main anchor setups that TTK could have. It made pretty much an execute denial impossible at that point. Fantastic job by Elyssar just speeding up that process, which some teams can just completely fail at doing. Like we saw, funny enough, Elyssar fail at doing all the way back around number 1. A complete change up in pace, and that's exactly what they need to do to keep this ball rolling in their favor.
And again, show that it was not a lost attacking half, and that those first 2 rounds were not representative of how Elyssar is going to play for the remainder of this half. Now at the tipping point, or the balance, the fulcrum, I suppose, whatever word you want to use, could lean either way. Now it's time for the kids to see if they can make the adjustments and swing things back in their favor. Kitchen dining defense coming out from them, and running a similar setup, and Elyssar certainly not. No Amaru, no Dokkaebi, no Ying, and unfortunately, no Wimpy in this round either, as Mr. B spawn peeks out Fireplace Doorway, takes down a very key operator in the Flores.
Elyssar can always be a pretty surgical team altogether. They don't expect the unorthodox, and Mr. B, well, sometimes likes to get aggressive to help out his team in the early round despite only being on that main supportive role. Wimpy already gone. That can definitely allow that vitality of the shields to stay up for much longer, and also their value to increase over time. So that's a huge kill altogether. You still have a couple of grenades here and there, but you would probably want to save them more or less for just finding kills altogether. But hey, that is still a major frag altogether for TTK. At the very least, just having extra gun up, but also the utility that Wimpy can bring in terms of that one-man army kit is also massive as well.
Also, breaks with the trend that Elyssar have had the past 2 rounds. Both the rounds TookTheKids won. They won that opening duel, well, pretty much uncontested from Elyssar. In the second go-around, there was one trade, but it was Inrio getting the opening pick both times, and now, unfortunately, like rounds 1 and 2, round 5, Elyssar have to fight back from a disadvantage. Still some good utility that is being put to good work. X-Kairos opening up that office wall, but Kavini will rotate back in response, as half the round is already gone. With nobody on Master Bedroom window, they are free to rotate in between Master Bedroom and office once that forward wall is opened up. Christ also has this deployable shield to play behind a piano, but again, he can start rotating back, albeit with a little less comfort that Packer or Gavini had. He'll even rotate across, but Inrio has filled the gap that he left inside a piano just a few seconds prior and cut down the Jaeger. Bathroom also getting contested by Young Alec. Both him and Inrio will try to pinch out that position. They'll find the Malusi, but it's Gavini inside a Master Bedroom who provides the second obstacle, but also swiftly shut down, potentially a third as well, but it still took the kids holding on to the lead even after the very quick contestation and equalization by Elyssar. And Alec picks up one, making the 1v3 a little bit more palatable of a 1v2. But now Packer and Woos rotate back.
And they begin to fall downward. They don't really mind Elyssar being able to finally get control of this top floor because Young Alec really can't do all that much. He has to hop down these stairs and potentially force a very difficult position to claw back from, but he has time to gather information. He'll do just that with the Twitch drones, spotting out both players to maybe make this a little more winnable for himself in that 1v2.
He has intel and even one more Twitch drone if he wants to do it, but Time to get that intel is quickly closing for young Alec. He also, as you can see, does not have diffuser, so it kind of forces his hand a little bit. He's got to rotate over, pick it back up, but oh no! He misses the diffuser as he hops back down. Likely now has to just commit to going for these kills, and unfortunately for him, he'll rotate right in the middle of a shield that Packer will peek out of and finish him off fairly quickly. TookTheKids take round number 5, as once Elyssar don't have an entry duel victory in their hands, seem to have a little bit more trouble moving forward in the round.
And altogether, not being in the right positions once again, or at least setting up to be in those right spots, it allowed a lot to be given away by Elyssar's own accord, having Gavini just constantly move around, almost having Triss get away if it were not for the fast actions by Enrio. The second that shield got destroyed, he hopped into Piano, expecting a gunfight to ensue because young Alec already had the cutoff in bathroom. So that was a good play by Enrio. But besides that, Elyssar, once again, they just took a little too long to set up, and they were rather linear on their setup altogether, allowing everyone at one point to sit on top in the middle of Solar and just deal heaping amounts of damage to Elyssar. And that was the whole purpose of that round for Elyssar. They wanted that top floor control. They wanted to establish vertical once again. They wanted to weaken that site presence and maybe try to tease a defuse setup. But because they just couldn't even clear the top floor, that didn't happen. And we only saw one player at one point hop down the first floor, and it was young Alec in a 1v2 at his position well known.
And for the final attempt, round number 6 for TookTheKids defense, we got Bar and Gaming once again for TookTheKids' final attempt. Also a change. No Amai. A little bit odd. Even though we saw Elyssar completely bypass that impact trick and that setup on top fireplace by just throwing in some flashes, they forego it. Now, obviously, bringing the Warden, you know, it's meant to have those glasses to be able to look through the flashbangs that Elyssar will send through, but it might also hurt them in terms of going for this setup in the first place. Sure, you don't have Omai, and sure, you can counter what Inrio and the rest of Elyssar did to clear out this position. With no magnets, those nades, with an extra set now being brought by Wimpy, become a lot easier to clear and to deal with.
All depends on that placement, though, once again. Currently, Wimpy is just out droning, doing his best to try to gather any information early on. So if we only have mostly Inrio and Giddy try to mound with those grenades, that might give enough time for Gavini just to simply fall back, especially if no one is out on that main balcony or no one is near Piano. Once again, there goes the first of many flash grenades, and a nade is there to follow up, but Gavini cannot evade it in time. The worst fears have come into reality, as Gavini has already been dropped dead by a well-placed grenade by Inrio.
Ooh, and Wimpy creeping into the fireplace double door takes down Trist as well, sitting over by blue stairs. So now TookTheKids in a position where they're forced to get aggressive. Mr. B behind the shield will already start moving up, trying to find an angle into fire, or not into fireplace, excuse me, but in the library. Nobody from Elyssar is actually pushed in just yet. They're still outside on that balcony, droning in, getting some intel, as they should. They have a 5v3 with still half the round to go as of, well, at this very second. So no point getting ahead of yourself and giving TookTheKids any opportunities to get some easy frags. Another drone will spot Mr. B, but nothing to be concerned about. Only 3 drones for Elyssar. It is a little bit different because young Alec has those Twitch drones and the Ionic clone as well in the hands of Inrio, but still, gotta be careful with this intel.
Ooh, and great extension by Wimpy. Not sure if he's where someone's over near laundry stairs, though. A quick cleanup by Woos, and now things look a little bit better, especially now that Packer joins into the fun and completely equalizes. I believe Mr. B is still above as well, so really nothing has been gained by Elyssar once we turn into that 3v3.
Packer has that angle watching the jump in from stock. Inrio. Gotta be careful that he doesn't meet the same fate as Giddy, but young Alec. Young Alec is just in the sight. Woos has no idea. He looks at the other doorway, but the Twitch is just sitting there. He's got intel on the player in stock as well, is waiting for Packer to give himself up to that spot. Mr. B upstairs shuts down one of the potential anchors or support structures for young Alec. He's fallen as well as Packer peeks out of his position, rotates back into the site, and that leaves Vivid to walk in through Mudroom and try to get a 3-3 half for his team. Pre-fires through the wall, and just puts Packer down to 1 HP, but with the shotgun, all Packer needs is to hit one shot, but that one shot evades him, that one opportunity gone. Mr. B puts Vivid to 1 HP, and finally cleans up a very nice 3K. And giving TookTheKids a 4-2 half.
Don't know if that was planned by Mr. B to drop the hatch as a distraction against young Alec, but it most certainly caught myself and the Twitch off guard, granting a 2 versus 1, and Mr. B able to clean up that last frag onto the Habana, just trying to hop into Mudroom, trying to make ends meet. Altogether, though, the very get-go of that round, was very well coordinated by Elyssar once again. I love the position that Wimpy held, because once you end up receiving a lot of pushback from that top floor, sometimes people will drop down in through Mez near that little railing position. If you play in the middle of Fireplace Double Door, you could probably find a kill on someone dropping down and not expecting anyone to be in that position. And Wimpy, well, he didn't find anyone from dropping down in Mez. That position was cleared up by Inrio. He still got a kill on someone rotating from Dining Room, granting a 5-on-3. But because we didn't have a majority of people focusing on trying to clear out Mr. B, he was still able to hold in that top floor position. And as well, with a lack of information, TTK were able to get a couple of surprise kills here and there, completely equalizing the board. And like I mentioned, Mr. B still being up above, able to deal tons of damage as well. And then joining up with Packer to make sure they could try to play in that 2v2 as well together as a team as they could. And it granted them the win altogether as well.
Elyssar have to, unfortunately, meet a fate that seemed like was going to happen in the first 2 rounds. Question mark was put at the end of it, rounds 3 and 4, but now they're on the wrong side of a 4-2 half on Chalet. They get to go to the defense. They don't have to worry about attacking pace issues so far, but even though Finka might be banned, TookTheKids had a little bit easier of a time on the early rounds in attack so far inside of CR, at least compared to Elyssar, both in terms of stage 2 and especially this weekend, unfortunately. Again, no Finka, so that means Gavini will go to the Nook. Of course, we just saw Wimpy put to good use in the previous round, but one that I imagine Gavini will feel right home on, just trying to find an opening and not really playing in a bit of a structure, more so just trying to find an opportunity. In this case, acquire some early control and an early engagement on Library Stairs.
Yeah, Gavini just being able to do whatever he wants can sometimes be pretty helpful for him, as sometimes put in the right place at the right time on his own accord can end up dealing a lot of damage against their opponents. So far, though, the drone game looking relatively solid for TTK. They want to try to clear out this top floor extension as fast as possible, but so far, someone playing directly in office to try to slow them down, that being Wimpy. But if his fallback is poorly timed, he'd end up dying outright, but I believe he just manages to get out, keeping us at that 5-on-5.
Now I can take the long angle all the way from Solar, using that Aruni DMR, that M14. Anybody decides to not even get aggressive and TookTheKids on that top floor, but just decides to hold that angle, make sure nobody pushes up aggressively from Elyssar. Through Master Bedroom in office, if he's able to take a fight and take down the coverage, that could make a retake a lot more probable or a lot more easy for Elyssar if TookTheKids continue with their attack, which so far hasn't faced many impediments. They've opened up the Heaven Wall, they've opened up the Dining Wall. They haven't had much control inside of the site, and they don't have much vertical. So that's likely the next step that they'll have to take, but if they get that, they have plenty of time to do. Looking very good.
Not too sure where Packer wants to go. Maybe on the Winder Repel to make sure he has an even stronger cutoff, the way no one can go for vertical. But at least there is still Trist above to try to handle anyone that tries to play and stop that post-plant setup, as besides that position held by Trist, everyone is focused in on that first floor. They want to hit the site as quickly as possible.
Packer looking to impact that window. He'll just hop right on in. There's somebody to his hard left, but fortunately dies to the very player that I thought he was aiming to get. Caught off guard by Giddy. Woos answers back, and somebody puts Mr. B to low HP as well, but it seems like they're just going for the kills, but Mr. B will rotate into an off spot. Still TookTheKids, keeping things close, keeping things even. They'll finally take the lead and get the bomb down as well. It's an even 2v2, so it's not nearly as decisive, but Woos definitely the deciding factor for TookTheKids. Fortunately, he'll fall to Inrio from above. That vertical control that TookTheKids didn't really have a solid grasp on. Coming back to haunt them, Zeeping on his position as well! And Inrio with almost all of his clip downs Mr. B, but does he know? Does he know that he's downed? Yes, he does. There's a Z-ping on it, and Mr. B presents himself in that doorway right as Inrio marches down to the first floor. Elyssar get their first defense, and it might have been close, but TookTheKids certainly made it a little bit easier by just flooding in and trying to decide it by gunfights.
And because we didn't have that frag onto Giddy, TTK were really never in a comfortable spot to try to set up after that post-plant position. On top of Trist dying as well, they had to constantly fear dealing with that vertical presence as well. And with Giddy finding several different frags on that round, it was just a very weak man presence altogether by TookTheKids, so they couldn't really fall back at a safe time, just sit in the background and let that case just dwindle down in seconds. They had to play in the site, and they had to fully commit that play they were opting to go for in the final 40 seconds of that round, which, with the fact there was still information on the board and it was a direct 1v1 with vertical control, Elyssar were going to win that pretty much any day of the week, utilizing what things they had left in that round to try to salvage it altogether. Things looking a little bit better for them as they're at least able to find one round win on their defense, and now they get to go play one of the more favorable sites altogether on Chalet, that one being Barn Gaming.
A lot of twists to the setup that in addition to the setup that TookTheKids ran for their attacking half, and the common setup that people run on bar and games. We have the Jaeger, we have the Wamai, we have Inrio running the Azami, which can make this position a lot easier to play, can allow you to get a bit more aggressive on that window. You have a Kiva barrier to, well, do exactly what Inrio is doing. Place them on some of those trophy cabinets and allow players to sit behind if they really want to get aggressive, but more likely than not, either one, force the attack to burn some utility, but even then, allow Inrio just to play a little bit more to the left of that doorway and have the cover of that Kiva barrier to allow him to just peek on up and take a fight without having to peek all the way into the doorway.
Young Alec trying to play aggressive in library, which when you have ADSs, Surya Gates, and Magnets, I mean, it's not a bad idea to go for that at all. You can maybe find a couple of cheeky kills as well. If someone has their grenade picked out, for example, gun is not at their ready, and that could end up being a pretty good entry that Elyssar might need to hold in this top floor for much longer. So far, though, TTK not opting to deal with library directly. Instead, they want to get office control and maybe burn out that utility the old-fashioned way, getting rid of that blue control, and then they can attack library from multiple fronts instead.
Beanie with that Hell Scanner, even if his team is like, no, we don't have time for your nades just yet, or we don't want your nades just yet, he can just activate that Hell Scanner, move around a little bit, and with intel on somebody down inside a trophy, thanks to Packers droning, Beanie can catch the Saruni off guard and take down a position that can sometimes turn the tables for a defense, other times might not mean much, but here, might just mean a lot for TookTheKids. And he knows he's drone, but he's not aware of Gavini whatsoever, but the Nook just barely sells himself, losing almost all of his HP and almost losing the opening pick. But he does take down Giddy, and now with those two nades, can later go and try to put pressure on the library and blue stairs.
And for Elyssar, they now also have to worry about that horizontal take before the vertical has even gone down. TTK still trying to put the pieces together to get rid of these key spots over in library and top mez. But again, having Gavini just play that cutoff and eventually maybe hit the site, it could definitely go a long way, especially since that timer is getting pretty darn close to the final 60 seconds.
Inrio still has some Kiva barriers to lay down, but a second kill goes TookTheKids' way. Hacker takes down Wimpy, and now Inrio has got to push up aggressively inside a library, but there's Gavini now gone. TookTheKids likely not stalled too much, but if Inrio could even get one more kill or just burn some more time with the Kiva barriers, he can make this work. He's still getting aggressive. Downs Trist outside on office balcony. He's got the play. He's got the right idea in mind. A third almost goes his way. Diana vaults out of the window at the exact right time, retakes the engagement. Woos being, well, dwindled down in HP, whittled down by a different angle. Young Alec getting aggressive as well alongside the Azami. And TookTheKids, they are very much now stalled outside of library and struggling to find an entry point. Almost 30 seconds left, 35 specifically. Mr. B will now vault on in and try to accomplish what the Yana failed to do. He's moving his way on in. He's made his way to top fireplace. He takes down the Azami, almost looking to Young Alec as well, but the Wamai will retreat once the Azami falls, not wanting to press his luck now that it's entered a 2v2. Elyssar on low HP, likely going to be the one that Elyssar are hoping to get. Consolidate the position alongside Mr. B, moving in through Fireplace. Excellent shot onto Young Alec, but it cost most of Mr. B's HP, and maybe the chance to clutch that 2v2. 1v1 now. 50% depleted, 50% remaining, only 5 seconds left. Woos goes in for the peek, and oh, what a nice shot onto Vivid. Cuts him down, and widens the lead for TookTheKids once again.
And the micro adjustments were almost enough for Elyssar to win that round. They played so well when holding that top floor. There was a major lack of information by TTK. They were just going off of guesses at that point, educated assumptions where the defense were still playing, as they only had 2 drones left in their entire pool of information. So those small swings on people, onto Triss, for example, that currently had their grenade out, and swings onto Packer that were focusing on meds instead of someone maybe playing over near that small cubby in library, it paid dividends to grant a very strong position altogether for Elyssar. And when they lost too many bodies, they were a bit willing to give up that top floor because they already had burned so much time and resources up above. But TTK just, once again, they're playing in that wolf pack mentality. They are sticking together. They are playing for each other's swings and refrags. It is just enough, by the skin of their teeth, to get the job done and get another round closer to match point. But man, did Elyssar try their best and almost secure that equalization round win 2 against TTK.
Gotta give it to Inrio and Young Alec up above, able to keep things as close as they were, but TookTheKids not keeping things close. Well, I mean, you know, a little bit, kind of half and half. It's a 2-round lead. They're not stomping Elyssar, but very much in a comfortable position on Chalet attack, especially with the momentum after winning that very close round number 8. Basement defense from Elyssar, if you we're not able to tell just yet. And Shocker also have some people all the way upstairs and all around the map at the moment, though. Giddy was one of them. He has now fallen back towards the site. And, ooh, look at this. Opening dual victory for Elyssar. Something they have sorely lacked throughout this game. Something that in the rounds they have won has been a consistent trend.
And that's Wimpy's first entry, I think, in this game as well. Normally, he is kind of that make-or-break player. And so far, he hasn't been doing all that well in this matchup, but hopefully finding that first of many entries, perhaps, that could change, especially on someone like Wooz, whose entry stat has been looking pretty good a majority of this stage. TTK, though, they don't seem that phased. They were still able to get the double wall opened up in snow, and they're still able to try to get this long angle opened up, but a Mute Jammer will currently stop them from doing so, and a well-timed K-Claw will break both those Selmas, but still, having another Thermite charge and another Selma to be deployed, it's not completely over just yet in terms of that hard destruction apartment for TTK.
Still got a few more pieces of utility up their sleeve. First EMP goes out. Final Exothermic goes out as well. All the hard breaching now used, and seemingly to great effect as all the angles TookTheKids could hope for now fully opened up. And Elyssar have to start using some of that useful utility like toxic canisters to delay the ample time TookTheKids have.
Well, we've seen Packer in this spot over near Snowmobile do so much damage before. If Elyssar tend to forget about that key location, that could be a huge way for TTK to equalize and maybe even find an advantage in terms of that kill department.
Cut down Giddy inside of blue. We find someone playing around the main stairs. But it's a standstill. Cold War inside of Wine right now with nobody blinking or firing just yet. Flashbangs going in though. Some caught, some land. And now finally everyone from Elyssar finds their feet on the ground. But Elyssar finding all the kills that matter. 3 go their way. Trist rounding things out, making it a little bit more even. Still, not exactly a great situation so far. They have intel, plenty of players. One on West Main, one on the hatch. Mr. B could easily make this a 2v2 if he just moves just a little bit to the left. He's got it right here. Knows he's there. Finally, the shot lands and it comes through. 2v2 now. Maybe a 1v2, but no, Giddy has something to say about it. He's a little bit faster with that AUG, but Trist has plenty of bullets to make it work. Now 1v1, 2 rounds in a row now. Once again, and only 20 seconds left. Trist has control of the diffuser, but getting this bomb down could be a little bit problematic. Maybe a little bit problematic for Wimpy. He's very far away. Trist can plant successfully and move us to a post plant, potentially on match point. Trist can just win this one. Gunfight spots him, but oh, what a shot by Wimpy. Cuts Trist down all the way from downtown and denies match point for at least one more round.
The 50-50 gamble at the beginning worked for TTK because with Wimpy still above, you have to worry about that hatch presence near dining, but Wimpy had already committed in that fireplace location, had to walk down Snowmobile stairs, and it allowed the post plant to be procced, but Trist missing out on a vital headshot. He was in the right place, but his crosshair was not close enough to Wimpy's skull to confirm that kill, allowing him to land a dirty shot, and altogether, a much better performance outright for Elyssar as well. It was another dire 2v2 with TTK just jumping in the site and hoping everything would pan out. Honestly thinking that if Mr. B maybe had tried sticking that defuse perhaps in somewhere the hatch play couldn't be all that potent, that could have been a very different round as maybe having Trist just watch either the hatch or blue, maybe even the same location at the same time. That could have been match point contention or TTK, but so many things to worry about all at the same time. It is a lot to ask for, even for some of the best players that we see in this stage currently, but still a great cleanup by Elyssar, and they really did give TTK little to no options except just to Hail Mary in the site and hope they win their gunfights exactly.
After having a close one after that 7-0 yesterday, Elyssar still able to, again, keep things close to Took the but hopefully in a little bit different of a fashion, coming down to 2 1v1s in a row, and in that case, a defuse from Wimpy, as you very eloquently recounted for anybody who missed it, and if you didn't miss it. Now, John, now we're going down to dining, all the way back, in the very first round that Elyssar played. Again, another one that came down to a 1v1. Very interesting trend, by the way, if you haven't noticed. A lot of these rounds, John, coming down to 1v1s, coming down to defuses as well.
And a lot of these rounds still being won by the team that actually scores that entry. I think that stat line is still true, except for round 6, where Inrio got the grenade kill, and then they messed up a 5v3.
It is actually still true. That is very weird with how close these defenses have been, that trend is still correct, save for one exception. That's very weird.
one caveat, one X factor round, but in almost anything, there's going to be an X factor. Maybe Gavini could be that player on round number 10. Still opting to go for the Nook. A lot of valuable resources, info denial, people denial, because he has nades, probably going to kill people. FMG9 sometimes is not that player denial, because sometimes that gun kind of sucks, but you know what, put in the right hands, it can deal a good amount of damage, at least to the skull. So far though, TTK still leading the charge, at least in the hands of Woo's, trying to break that Kaid claw. I believe he was able to do that, so now Mr. B can enter the building, get that office wall opened up, and at least allow a line of sight to be made to, once again, stop that verticality, and maybe help enable that post-plant setup.
Also, you talk about Gavini being the X Factor player. You know who is the player right now? Mr. B, Mr. British, Mr. Biblical. Look at him,
Yeah.
11-6 right now playing Thermite. Okay? Let's.
Not the first time either.
I'm gonna be like exactly. I'm gonna be like CJ, and I'm gonna gas up Mr. B right now. So we have half the round now remaining. Maybe plenty of time for Mr. B to pad that stat line even further. Though Gavini, the tip of the spear, moving into piano, he'll back out a little bit, just testing the waters, getting his feet wet. And probably for the best, as you can see, Inrio is more than ready for somebody pushing into this position. He has the angle, but no, still loses the fight. Both Woos and Gavini get 2 on the board for TookTheKids, looking to get match point after these very close series of rounds and get something a little bit more decisive if it's going to be a victory. Giddy will hop back down after TookTheKids pretty dominantly take this top floor. But oh, what a powerful C4 that very narrowly nets 2. But Mr. B retreats, and only Woos is the one that falls. And that means TookTheKids still retain the lead that they have and have time to get this control as well. Finds Giddy down below, peeking out that window, trying to get aggressive. It's an easy pickup for Gavini once he spots the head in between those rafters. And when those C4s remaining, as they've already both been used by Vivid and Young Alec, they have to hope that they can peek through the very angles that Giddy died from. Or in this case, it'd be Young Alec, but Vivid is looking to retake that top floor. There's one player to deal with, and it's all left up to him now. He's got to make this retake up top connect, and it doesn't find anything. Unceremoniously ended by Gavini, peeking the very breach they entered earlier. They moved to match point with finally a decisive round in the second half.
And although Gavini was the X factor in finding 3 kills, the majority of those kills were found off the back of his teammates doing their job as well. Triss playing for Vertical, granting that second kill for Gavini, and the info game by the rest of his teammates, not just himself, to know when and how to push that top floor to try to force back Elyssar at a pretty good time frame. Even Mr. B was joining in too, actively swinging a guy near bathroom doorway, even though he had case, because the majority of that presence was already cleared out, and he had players close to him in case that case needed to be retrieved as well. It was a very precise attack on that top floor, and I'm glad TTK didn't just go for the exact same attack either. They completely changed things up, because when they were trying to go for the post plant last time Dining was in play, that completely failed, especially since a lot of their power came in through maybe having someone just late hop in through trophy window, that being Packer, I believe, and he was on the Zofia, trying to deal as much damage as he could to maybe distract a lot of people from that main push leading into Dining Wall. But again, because TTK completely flipped the script essentially and went for a more regular attack of fully clearing out the top floor and then working their way down the solar stairs, it guaranteed that Elyssar weren't able to find all that much, especially since they got put in a 5-on-3 pretty much off the rip of that attack and clear.
And speaking of being put in a 5-on-3 early on, this was a round that we did see something similar from Elyssar on their attacks, but not something that we saw from TookTheKids, as this round again came very close towards the end of the engagements. For Elyssar, thankfully, they're going with that same setup. Even though, it ended up failing, it still worked out very well, at least in terms of the utility. It was the kills that weren't working out, with Gavini moving into master bedroom and office early on. Elyssar running things back. So Young Alec, same position. Inrio, same position. Gotta find some way to deal with TookTheKids, especially Gavini getting that opening pick last time, just sitting over in library.
Wondering if TTK might want to go for a Rotero drone to force out that one my player. Might be an interesting idea, especially if he flubs trying to land those shots in the Rotero drone, then it, turns invincible to bullets, and he has to either waste an impact grenade, which Young Alex does not have because he has proc alarms, or he just, again, gives up that position. So far, they'll do things just the regular way, throwing out those flash grenades, and finally, Young Alec falls back, not confirming the kill, though, on either side, but hey, at least there's only 3 flash grenades being wasted. There's still tons of utility in the pocket of TTK, especially since Mr. B still has all 4 of those Rotero drones, and still 2 separate grenades in the pocket of TTK as well.
Vivid using some of the same holes we saw actually be the undoing of, again, another Elyssar attack all the way back in the first half. Packer would just sit in this position, shotgun people through the floor, and that was pretty much the end of that 5v3 I was mentioning earlier. And Vivid trying to make use of that same position in case anybody from TookTheKids bolts in through these windows and starts getting aggressive. And Rio, he was getting aggressive a little bit, but he'll back off fairly quickly once that Rotero drone goes and destroys that Eva barrier. With no opening pick like we saw Gavini get onto Giddy last time, I was going to say things are a little different, but finally TookTheKids spring the trap and get themselves a 4v3. With Tristan low health and Vivid still having a very powerful angle at his disposal, he very easily swing back into Elyssar's favor. Just a couple well-placed shots and maybe some poor decisions from TookTheKids.
Still 2 smokes in the pocket, so that could definitely allow for a bit of a funnel to occur, but TTK looks like they want to make as little mistakes as possible. They are just trying to set up as perfectly as they can, having everyone work their way on the top floor, and then they can begin to fall down. Now having Zofia near that double window position, but it looks like a mudroom hop-in will be the main attacking idea, since a smoke grenade will currently block their entry from that double window.
To wait a little bit longer, and maybe 10 more seconds if Vivid survives long enough to get that final toxic canister down. Somebody entering from Mudroom might just fall to Wimpy. Lands a pre-fire, well, shoots a pre-fire in that area, but might not know that Wimpy is sitting on these stairs. You might have an idea, but not a concrete knowledge of it. Finally does see him, lands a couple shots as well, but Wimpy still gets the better of Trist in this situation, or the better of Packer, excuse me, but beyond that, that's all he will get. And all Elyssar will get will be 4 rounds on Chalet. As TookTheKids, on the one hand, seem like one of the best teams in CL right now, but it's another feather in the cap of Elyssar's many, many losses.
Well, a small kerfuffle there, I think, with figuring out who killed who, and that did allow the Jaeger to find 1 pick, but eventually everyone else securing their ones, having vital information, and also being in the correct locations too, having everyone on that top floor for a majority of that round, and then being able to set themselves up for the execute, diversifying where they wanted to push from. It did make a lot of those 1-for-1s very favorable for TTK altogether. And then when it came down to the 1v3, it was just Jaeger stuck in blue, and they're like, all right, we've got every position on lockdown. We don't even need to get the defuse. Let's just go swing the guy and kill him. And yeah, that's exactly everything they needed. And now they take a pretty nice regulation win, 7-4, and I'm not too sure where that puts them in placements altogether, but I know for a fact I think they're still in top 3.
Oh well, this was one of those games that definitely had some sway over that first place decision. Oh, yeah. I'm sure though, as thank you for bringing it up, John, that the analyst desk would be very much excited to talk about how this game plays into TookTheKids standing in stage 2, but also maybe how this again adds to the trend of Elyssar looking very worrying in stage 2.
Tanner, there is something I want to say. I know a 7-4 loss is not what you want if you're LSR, especially given where they are in the standings. But I do have to say, one of the things that they've been harped on a lot about was their speed on attack. They did drop 4 rounds on their attack, and I know it sounds like I'm mounting an argument against myself here as I throw it over to you, but there was some more speed on their attacks, I do have to say.
There was one round in particular where it finally felt like they started to giddy up and go. I mean, Elyssar have 2 speeds, you know, they either have slow as molasses on their attack half, or they're gonna rush you with Ying and trying to just hit sight and execute. But I will say on round 4, it was like we finally saw a little bit of that where they got a little bit more funk in their step, and they started pushing hard. We saw Inreal sprinting off the flashes, and it looked like, you know, all these woes that we've been talking about all stage for Elyssar, where they're just so slow, was like gone, because they took map control really quickly. They asserted themselves on the top floor, and it just and they managed to win that round. But then they just it's like they forgot about it. I don't know if they hit like a reset button in their brain, but again, going back to the next following attack rounds, you know, TookTheKids play very fundamentally very solid, and it just felt like there was just no oomph on any of their attack halves. And Chalet's a map, because of how attacker sided it is, it's one on the defensive half, and TookTheKids looked absolutely exceptional.
And I mean, Cookies, that leads perfectly to you. I would say TookTheKids, led by none other than Mr. B, absolutely crushed it.
This was a huge game for Mr. B's legacy, let me tell you, because we have harped on how Vivid is the IGL standard in Challenger League. He is the IGL. And well, Mr. B looked a hell of a lot better today. His team looked a hell of a lot better. Mr. B had some moments himself where he just kind of he pulled his pants up, right? Pulled him up, and he just he tightened the belt and he took control of the situation. And it's a statement game from these guys for sure. They've had about 5 of those this stage. I told y'all they're beating everybody. And Elyssar, it was no different today apparently.
So John pointed out, how impactful this game could be. This is one of those games where, because TookTheKids won, they've now cemented themselves in first. We still have to wait on Oculix's Playday today and their game. And for Elyssar, that leaves them firmly in 10th place, which means they are in fact in that relegation spot with only 1 game remaining. They're in do or die mode, because even Gaming Gladiators, with their win today, they have the chance to surpass Elyssar, and they might be auto eliminated, and that's just not something Elyssar I think wants to have. So they're going to really have to get in the books this weekend if they want to have any success, and come out of that relegation spot next weekend.
Well, it seems that TTK decided to celebrate really hard. They're already popping bottles of champagne, and I'm going to take this one personally from Mr. B that he didn't want to talk to me. So unfortunately, no interview with Mr. B today. We're going to go right to our break right now, but don't go anywhere. Match number 5, sorry, we don't know the map yet. Will be West Garfield Park for the second time today. They'll be taking on Aqualix.